Hello and welcome to another macro video. Today I'm looking at using track changes and doing so more effectively. So to start off with, a bit of a hobby horse. Clients sometimes say that they want full track changes. In other words, they expect that every change you make should be tracked. I'm afraid I don't agree that that's a particularly good idea. Do you really want to track space changed into space and space hyphen space into space dash space? I don't think so. What is the purpose of track changes? Surely it's to see the significant changes, and therefore I personally wouldn't track those changes, and there are others that I might not track. So if you're a Fredit user and you want to change space into space, let's have a look. Put the visible formatting on, so you can see there you've got space into space there, and here space hyphen space. Yeah. Personally, I switch the formatting off. Personally, I use 32s because a space is just an ASCII 32, and that makes it easier to see what's going on there. The colours are just there to make it easier for you to see as you're watching the video. Certainly wouldn't put those multiple colours on a real find and replace within Fredit. So what I'm saying is that if you're using Fredit, you probably already know that all you have to do is to apply a strike through attribute to any individual find and replace item that you do not want tracked. So I don't want those two tracked, so I put a line through, and I was using there the strike single macro just as an easy way to apply or to remove the single strike from items in the list. Okay, we've got some other possible tools that might be useful for track changing, dealing with track changes. I've done a video before about using compare now, and that's the link you can use to it, although obviously you've got to type it because it's on the video, and although that's a lowercase l there, the one on the end is a capital I, so I've made it a bit bigger and changed the font so you can see it. So compare now, what are we going to do? That could be useful if you've got an original text and you've got an edited text, you've changed it, and this is the final clean version. If I want to know how those two compare, I want to see the changes, then if the client really wants to see all the track changes, you can compare the original with the final clean version by using compare now. So if I run that from a keystroke, I get a window offering me the different files that I might want to work on, and I've got 1 and 2, and it's actually offering me 1, 2 as the default version. So if I press return, then it will give me the comparison of those two with the track changing. As you can see, there's quite a lot. There's formatting, there's lots of so all the quotation marks have changed from double to single. So as you go a bit further down there, some of these paragraphs here have got so many single and double quotes in that the track change system just gives up basically. And okay, this is Word 2010. I'm not quite sure how this will display on the later versions, Office 365, Word 365, but it's not good. So that you can produce that to say to the client, look, these are the changes that I have made to your document. However, let's move those out of the way. The next tool I want to show you is actually a new tool called Track Simplifier. Someone asked me, would it be possible to accept all of the track changing on punctuation, because their client said they did not want to see the changes to punctuation, only the changes to the words. And in the past I've had a macro called accept formatting, which I've used for years, by which I can instantly remove all the tracking for the format changes. But I decided to use this new request, the punctuation acceptance, and I put it all into one macro called track simplifier. So there's the document, lots of tracking on there, all sorts of things. So if I run track simplifier, I get a window offering me three options. I can simplify by removing the format changes, well not the changes but the display of them in track changes, the formatting, the punctuation and multiple spaces, because again multiple spaces aren't something that you really want to waste your time displaying on screen most of the time. So we can do this one at a time. You can type in 1, 2 or 4, or you can have a combination. So if you have 7, then that's all 3 at the same time. But let's do them one at a time. If I do number 1, that's the formatting. Run that. It goes down to it goes right the way through and down to the bottom. It did that fairly quickly because it's only a 1,700 word file, and it's those were lots of spaces in there, so it's left those. The punctuation's still there, but it's got rid of all the formatting. So any format changes are no longer there, no longer visible. So if I run it again, and this time ask for punctuation to be accepted, then it goes through and gets to the end eventually. So that is slower because there were a lot of changes. So this macro can be slow on a long document. It will take you to the bottom of the file when it's finished, and it'll bong to let you know. So be careful not to start clicking on the screen when it's in the middle, otherwise it might crash, as Word macros have a tendency to do. So it's taken all those out. If we try again this time, we go for a 4, multiple spaces, then it'll take the multiple spaces out. So it's leaving those as deleted stars and stars put back in, but I'm not quite sure why it does that, but anyway. And so you're now left with the significant changes, so you can see them and they're not obscured by all those track changes which are really not relevant. So that's helpful for that. Okay, there's a macro that I use quite a lot when I'm doing track changes, working in track changes. So if I switch track changes on in this file here, so suppose I remove the U, we're going to American, delete the U there. I think actually it's quite useful to see that not as a deleted U, because you can't see the significance of it unless you look carefully. If I double click on it, if I cut it, Control X, and paste it back, then it's now a more significant, I can see what's going on here. It can clearly see that you've changed the spelling from OUR to O, and so that's a helpful thing to do. But you're doing it by hand. So suppose we've got this next line, could not. Suppose we want that as couldn't. So delete the O, put in an apostrophe, and delete that. We can do the same again there, select the whole thing, cut it and paste it back. But if I use consolidate tracking macro, so it's one keystroke, click, and all that does is to select it, cut it and paste it back, but it's done one keystroke, so that's quite useful. So that's consolidating tracking. And two final ones which have been going along for ages. If you've got a lot of tracking in there and you want to accept or reject particular bits, obviously you can select something, then use the ordinary Word's own reject tracking or accept tracking. But what these macros do is, if I know that that's the only track on that line, if I click in the line somewhere and run track change accept, it'll accept that one. If I click in that row, I want to reject that one, so I run change reject, so it rejects that one. So in other words, it's doing it by the line very quickly, because you don't have to select anything, you just run the macro for that. Okay, well that's it for today and various bits on track changing. If you have any queries, do drop me an email. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye now.